Hello, and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. Very happy to be with you on a day that does begin with T, but is not Tuesday, bringing you another author interview. As we get started, I do want to remind you, as I always do, to please, if you haven't done so already, like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching this episode on. Really does help the algorithm, gets this podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. If you want to help the podcast and the network as a whole in a monetary fashion, you may do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. That's where you can leave a tip, a donation, whatever you would like to call it. As I said, it really does help not only this podcast, but the network as a whole. Some of you have been with me since the beginning. Some of you are new, and everything in between. But regardless of how long you've been here or what kind of support you've given over the years or the minutes, it is all appreciated. This is just another option, gsmcpodcasts.net, in case you would like to help out, like I said, in a monetary fashion. And no matter what support you give, it is greatly appreciated. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really, truly do. How is your week going? The week is almost over. I earlier thought it was Wednesday. I was talking to a student and I said something about it being Wednesday, and then I realized, no, it's actually Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow is Halloween. Whew, that means Saturday is November. It's a lot. It's so many things to remember and keep track of. But how has your week gone? How was your weekend last weekend? Things here are okay, a little bit crazy-ish. Not crazy, but it's been a week. My husband was quite sick at the beginning of the week with some stomach issues, and so that's never fun. Obviously, I'm not going to give you details, but that was that. And then, if you've listened to this podcast any length of time, I'm sure you've heard me talk about migraines. Had a migraine this week as well. So husband started feeling better. I started then migraine with nausea. So it's just been, our tummies have been sad all week. But in happier news, the baby that you see running around in pretty much every episode, the little white puppy, turned 1 yesterday. So our baby is 1, and in dog years, supposedly, however that math works, they say 7 years. How accurate that is, I don't know, but my husband keeps saying that now he's a 7-year-old. And I mean, I kind of see it. He's not really a 1-year-old, but I don't think he's a 7-year-old either. At any rate, I made him a birthday cake because even though I was still not feeling my best, I make my dogs birthday cakes for their birthday, and often for gotcha day as well. And this time it was peanut butter and sweet potato and applesauce and carrots and flour and an egg. Like, you could eat it. Oh, and the frosting was yogurt and peanut butter. So very good. He was very excited. And of course, old man got to eat birthday cake as well. But you know what? I told my husband yesterday, thank you for being the type of husband who willingly and without question sings happy birthday to a dog with me, because of course the dog doesn't care. And of course it's absolutely silly, but yes, we sang happy birthday to our dog yesterday and it made me very happy. That's my story for today. Let's talk about books so you don't have to listen to my strangeness. Hey, if you're a dog parent and you make birthday cakes or you sing to your dog, let me know, because I know you're out there. I know my people are out there, and I would love to hear your stories. But speaking of stories, let's talk about this week's book, which is Smoke on the Wind by Kelli Estes. As I mentioned at the end of the last episode, this is dual timeline and dual time frame. So dual timeline, historical fiction and contemporary fiction. Let me go ahead and give you the description of the book. Struggling with the tragic end of her marriage, Keaka, oh, did I say that right? Now I can't remember how Kelli says it. I'm so sorry. I think she said Keaka. That's terrible. I apologize in advance. Let me start this over. Struggling with the tragic end of her marriage, Keaka Denney is on a bittersweet adventure in Scotland with her son, Colin. She's joining him on a week-long hike along the West Highland Way before he enters university in Glasgow. Soon into the journey, Keaka's disquieting visions begin. A woman from ages past reaching for Colin, a burning cottage, violence. Scotland, 1801. After Sorcha Chisholm and her son are wrenched from their home in a brutal eviction, they face an arduous trek toward a new beginning. When Sorcha learns she's wanted for a murder she didn't commit, she and her son run for their lives. Then help arrives from the strangest woman in the most unexpected ways. Centuries apart, Keaka and Sorcha walk the same path, devoted mothers in circumstances beyond their control, who will do anything to keep their sons safe. Defying logic, they find strength in each other. But what does their connection mean, and how far will it go? So actually, I like that we are doing this episode the day before Halloween, and that I spoke to Kelli last weekend, before Halloween, because there is a little bit of a supernatural element to this. Keaka, and again, listen to how Kelli pronounces it, because for some reason I'm having a moment and I can't remember how she said it. So please listen to how Kelli pronounces the name of her own character. But she is wondering if she's seeing ghosts, because she wakes up. She and her son Colin are in Scotland. They are staying in a hotel. She wakes up and she sees a woman bending over Colin, and then the woman disappears. So she's thinking, is it a ghost? Then she starts having what she's not sure if they're dreams, hallucinations. So there's definitely a connection between these two women. Something of a supernatural connection, whether that's ghosts as originally is thought in the beginning, or if there's a spiritual connection or some kind of connection through the space-time vortex, however you want to look at that. Something is there, and both women are walking the same trail, path, way, but 200 plus years apart, and yet they keep having these moments where they're not sure what just happened or what they saw, and there are those connections. Of course, I'm not going to tell you more than that. You have to read the book to find out why these things are happening, what that connection is. And Kelli will speak a little bit about this. But if you like historical fiction, if you like contemporary fiction, either one, you've got that here. If you are a fan of Scotland, maybe you love books set in Scotland, maybe you just love Scotland, then that's an option here as well. But let's go ahead and let Kelli talk about the book. Again, the title is Smoke on the Wind. The author is Kelli Estes. Hi, Kelli. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun chat.
I'm excited. We're here to talk about Smoke on the Wind. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself so my listeners can get to know you, that would be great.
Okay. Smoke on the Wind is my third published novel. I live in the Seattle area. So my first book was set in Washington State. I write dual timelines. So both historical and present day goes back and forth. My first two books are American set. The first was Washington State with the anti-Chinese riots in the 1880s as the historical events. My second, and that was The Girl Who Wrote in Silk. My skill, they used themselves in the Civil War, which is true to history. And then this book, Smoke on the Wind, is set in Scotland. That's the place of my heart. It's the Scottish Highland Clearances. And do you want me to just launch into what that book's about, or not quite yet?
You can if that's where we're segueing. That's great.
Okay, yeah, I could. We'll see where this conversation takes us. So, Smoke on the Wind is dual timeline. It is two women, except in two different time periods, walking the same land in Scotland with their sons, both carrying the burden of past trauma and fear of her future, and they're both connected in a inexplicable way to each other, which it was really fun to explore. So the Highland Clearances, for those who don't know what that is, it was a time from like the mid 1700s to mid 1800s in Scotland where the landowners decided that they needed to clear their land of all their tenants, all of their people who had been living there for generations, and replace them with sheep, large-scale sheep farming. And this felt like a deep, deep betrayal to the people because it originated in the clan system where the people owned the land. They paid for it with the blood and lives of their young men, who always, stepped forward whenever the chief called for soldiers or people, to defend the clan, or even to and later times to fight for the country, in more of a military role. And so, the land was not a separate thing from the people. It was part of them. And then, so for this landowner to come in and say, no, you need to go now, and I don't care what happens to you, felt like a really deep betrayal. And so that's what happens to my historical character, Sorcha Chisholm. She is evicted from her home in a really tragic way. Her house is burned down, like the roof is falling on her. Mm-hmm. And a man is killed right in the first chapter. So that's not a spoiler.
No spoiler, really. Yeah.
So a man is killed in her cottage, pure accident. But when his body is discovered later, she and her son are wanted for murder. So they are walking south. At first, they think that they just need to find a place to live. They need to go to the city to find jobs. This was at a time before immigration was affordable, because in the early 1800s, the British government actively discouraged immigration because they wanted men to fight as soldiers in the Napoleonic Wars and wars in Ireland. And so, the immigration was just too expensive. And so my character's only option was to walk south. And when they learn that they are wanted for murder, the stakes are heightened. And then she sort of starts, having these weird visions of this other woman, which happens to be my present day character, Keaka. She and her son Colin are in Scotland. They live in Portland, Oregon, and Colin is about to start university at the University of Glasgow, and so they decided to walk the West Highland Way long distance trail, which is a hiking trail that runs from a Glasgow suburb north to Fort William. It's 96 miles long. Most people walk it about 7 days, and so they're walking this together as their last hurrah before he starts school, and she has to fly home alone and start this future with this new identity. She's not a mom, her son lives in another country, and there's other things going on. Her marriage had dissolved before her husband died, but they kept that a secret from Colin. And so anyway, this is a really long summary, but these two women find themselves connected in interesting, strange ways, but it does make all the difference to both of their journeys.
No. Was it a long explanation or introduction? Maybe, but it's also dual timeline, basically kind of two novels in one, historical and contemporary, plus you've got the supernatural element in between. That's not something that you can just put into like a one sentence, here you go. You could, but you want people to be interested. So no, long explanation. I'd rather have that than be like, wait, what? You said it was set in Scotland? That doesn't tell me anything. At any rate, we're going to take our first break of this episode. When we come back, Kelli will be talking about the initial inspiration behind this story. Which part came first? Historical, contemporary, supernatural? She'll be talking more about that. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on their fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Kelli Estes. As we get back into this second segment, this is your second and final reminder that if you want to help the podcast in a monetary way, you can go to gsmcpodcast.net and leave a donation. That helps this podcast. It also helps the network as a whole. You see that link in the video playing next to me, but you're also going to see it scrolling along the bottom of your screen throughout the episode, in case you ever want a reminder. But I will say one more time, that is gsmcpodcast.net. I'll also say one more time, but not the last time. You'll hear it a million times if you continue listening to this podcast for any length of time. Thank you for all of the support you give, no matter what form that support takes. Before the break, Kelli was giving an overview of Smoke on the Wind. So let's go back to that conversation with Kelli. What was your initial inspiration for the stories?
So personally, I am learning to speak Scottish Gaelic.
Mm-hmm.
I have Scottish ancestry, and I've always been interested in that culture. I also have always loved the history of Scotland. I've been reading books about it for a decade. And then I became interested in hiking in Scotland. I had a friend who actually is my literary agent. She did the West Highland Way hike, and I saw her pictures and I was just blown away. I'm like, I need to do that. So I hiked with her on the East Highland Way, which is another long distance trail in Scotland. And that's when I realized like knowing the history of the land there makes the experience so much richer. And so I decided at that point I would walk the West Highland Way, but first I would study all of the history that happened in the areas where the trail travels through. And so I went home and I booked my trip with my son, and then I dove into the history books and I learned, Rob Roy McGregor is in that area, and Robert you walk by a battlefield where Robert the Bruce, fought in 1306 or something. Like, it's incredible history. And so my son Riley and I, he was only 16 at the time, we walked the West Highland Way together in 2019. And by then, this story had been talking to me. Like, I had a pretty good idea of what it was going to turn out to be. I already had my characters. And so walking the trail, I was able to think, how would Sorcha see this? How would Keaka see this area? And what, how would it be different in 1801 when Sorcha is there compared to present day? So that really, really was a really important experience. And it was a bit life-changing because I just love hiking in Scotland. It gets you away from the tourist area. You're out in the middle of this glen. There's not even a road or this moor. And it's just, you feel like you can almost hear the whispers of all the people who lived there and passed by there before you. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, please tell me that you were a little better prepared for this hike than Keaka was in terms of training beforehand. Did you at least break in your boots?
Yes, I was definitely more prepared, although I showed up with plantar fasciitis, and so that was not fun. But I managed, yeah.
Okay.
But still, no matter how in shape you are, it's still, 7 days of walking.
Yes.
The longest day is 20 miles. The shortest day is probably 8. And so, yeah, I was pretty sore, but
yeah, I can imagine.
Totally worth it.
Did you camp or stay in like Airbnb, not Airbnb, but like bed and breakfasts?
Yeah, we did the bed and breakfast route, and inns and bed and breakfasts, and that is, if you can hike that way, I totally recommend it.
Yeah.
Like out here in Washington State, we don't have, our trails are up in the mountains. You can only camp.
Yeah.
Where in Scotland, like usually the trail comes close to a village or goes right through the village, and you can plan your route to stay in an inn or an Airbnb and end your day with a warm shower, a hot meal, and a soft
The
bed.
bed.
And that makes all the difference to getting up and going again in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you always plan for there to be the supernatural element between the two timelines?
I didn't know. That actually came as a surprise. The further I got into, I plot my books ahead of time, so it was during like the intense plotting, like figuring out exactly what was going to happen in each chapter. And I got to thinking, I like there always to be something connecting the two time periods in my
Mhm.
books. In my first book, it was a Chinese embroidery. In my second book, it was a diary.
Mhm.
And I just knew, what could possibly connect these two women in Scotland. And I have a few things. Like it started with some rock carvings. Um, that's something, that is enduring and could be placed throughout the landscape.
Mhm.
But then the deeper I got in my plotting, I realized like, no, these, like, I don't even remember it being a decision. It just started like they were talking to me like, oh no, these things happen. Like Keaka sees a vision of Sorcha, and I don't know about you, but I tend to I believe in ghosts. I've seen ghosts.
Mhm.
I believe that there's more to the world than we really understand or
Mhm.
know. And so, it could be possible that these images we see, or when we wake up at night and we see what we think is a ghost, maybe it's more of an imprint of like someone who lived in the past, and it's like
Mhm.
their energies are lingering. Like we just don't know. And so I'd love to embrace that fully and dive into like, what if, and that's why also I don't even, well, I'm not going to say that. That's a spoiler. I got I got it. I'm a reader who doesn't mind spoilers, so I'm constantly
Mhm.
having to stop, check myself, and like, oh wait, no, people don't like spoilers.
Right.
So
Yes.
okay, stopping right there.
Well, in terms of Sorcha and Keaka as the two protagonists, what about them do you think will resonate with readers?
I think if any reader is a parent, they'll definitely connect with my characters in that regard, because that's a strong theme running through the book. In my characters' cases, it's mothers and sons, and the things that a moms will do for their son or their child, boy or girl. The things that I have two boys myself, so that's just where my mind goes, boys. But we will do anything for our kids.
Yeah.
And also this time period in life where, for Keaka, her son's going off to college, or for Sorcha, the future is unknown, and possibly they would be separated forever, especially if they're caught and thrown in jail. And in that time, it's, so you're sent to Australia, or
Right.
the I forget, the name is slipping my mind right now, but or even hung for murder. And so, her impending separation from her son could be forever. Uh, and so it's mom's, like, what's this next chapter going to look like? And, I'm excited in Keaka's case, I'm excited for my son and all the opportunities he's having, but I'm a little bit sad for me. And, it's just a roller coaster of emotions for parents at
Mhm.
that time of life. So I think readers will connect in that regard. Also, anybody who likes to hike, you'll love this book, because we get out in Scotland, and readers have told me that, they feel like they're there on the trail, and they never realized Scotland was so beautiful. Now, hopefully through my book, it'll make you want to go visit, because it's a wonderful place. Um, yeah, and then it's just, the mystery light of the murder, and will these women survive?
Mhm.
What will happen to Sorcha and Anuis when they are caught? Though,
Yeah.
so hopefully there's a lot that a reader can connect with.
Yeah. And you said that you plot pretty, you outline pretty heavily. So then you probably do you also have a really good understanding of your characters before you start writing?
I do, yeah. my process is that I start with the research. And so like I didn't even really know that it would be the Highland Clearances would be my historical story. It was the present day storyline that came to me first. And those characters started talking to me, so I just take all the notes of who they are telling me they are. And then I dive into the research, and I was reading all these history books, and there's so much interesting history in Scotland. And yet I just felt like the clearances is something that a lot of people don't know about, that actually had ripples down to today. Like in Scotland itself, there's still glens that are completely empty that used to be full of people, and they're still empty today. Like it totally changed the landscape and the communities of Scotland. But then all the people, once immigration did become affordable, all the people who emigrated from Scotland to North America, to Canada and the East Coast, or to Australia or New Zealand, they changed those communities. And so I had a worldwide impact. And so that was, why I chose the clearances. And then the more I learned, the more I, the characters start talking to me. Like I just start seeing scenes, like, oh, Sorcha, this happened to Sorcha, and I, write it down. And like, sometimes I don't even know where that'll fit in the story, but so that's why, like, okay, I have all these scribbled notes of these scene ideas, and then I sit down and kind of compose it into a plot, chapter based. And then, so once I sit down to write, I have all my bullet points of, okay, this is going to happen in this chapter. Right. And then about page 100 of my manuscript, I always, for some reason, reach this point where I have to stop writing, go back and reread everything I've written and redo it, rework my outline going forward. And then, because I've gotten to know the characters even a little bit better by this point.
Yeah.
Because, I've been in their minds and hearts more.
Right.
And then that they tell me, like, they would never do that, with this thing that I have them planning to do later in the book. Like, okay, so I got to rework that. And then it goes pretty smoothly from there.
Okay.
So,
great.
yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Page 100 sounds a little bit terrifying to me, but that's just because I'm projecting like my own feelings about writing and getting to that point and then realizing, this doesn't work. This needs to be reworked. Like the reader part of me says, yeah, that's great, because I don't want to read a book that doesn't make sense or feels disjointed. But I know myself, and I would get to that point and either be like, yep, this needs to be changed. I'm ready. I'm going to do it. Or I would want to cry. So that's just me projecting my feelings onto page 100. But we are going to take our next break of this episode. When we come back, Kelli will be talking about some of the research that she did for this book. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Kelli Estes. Before the break, Kelli was talking about the process of writing and how at a certain point in writing her manuscript, maybe the characters start talking to her in different ways, or the plot has progressed in a way that means that things need to be reworked, which makes absolute sense, of course, right? And as a reader, like I said, I'm very grateful that authors take the time to look for those points and rework those points so that it makes sense to those of us who are reading it. But it feels terrifying to me. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Kelli. Obviously, you did a lot of research, especially for the historical timeline, but was there any particular piece of research that really stood out or surprised you?
Oh goodness, so much. Actually, what really surprised me the most about the Highland Clearances is, if you dip into that history, if you start reading about it, or um, just watch a piece of media that was made about it, they often start at like Culloden, which a lot of people are familiar with from watching
Mm-hmm.
Outlander.
Mm-hmm.
Culloden was the big battle in 1746. That was like the last Jacobite uprising. And after that, the clan system was pretty much wiped out
Yeah.
because the government made speaking Gaelic illegal and wearing of the kilts illegal, and
Mm-hmm.
Highlanders couldn't carry firearms. Like it really, really changed the clan system. But in my research, I was surprised that actually it started so much earlier. The seeds were planted to break down the clans as early as 1603, when King James the Sixth of Scotland became James the First of England. That's
Mm-hmm.
when the crowns were united. And he, like in 1609, there was the Statutes of Iona, where he brought some chiefs to the Isle of Iona and made them sign this agreement. And one of the stipulations that was demanded of them was that they would raise their children would be educated in an English speaking school in the lowlands, so either in Edinburgh or London area. And that just started planting the seeds of disconnection between the landowner and their people. And
Mm-hmm.
by the time of the late 1700s, when the clearances started, the landowners may not even know their people. Many of them didn't speak the Gaelic language anymore, so they couldn't connect to their people. They didn't have that deep inherent connection to to the culture. And so, they had no sense of loyalty or responsibility to their people. All they could see is the money they could get from their land. And so, there were other things happening, but that really surprised me. Like, it was actually a Scottish king who started kind of planting the
Yeah.
seeds that led to this horrible tragedy happening later.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so I can imagine that writing dual timelines like this is a bit like writing two separate novels, and that you're writing historical fiction and contemporary fiction. What are the
Mhm.
challenges?
Yeah. It actually is like writing two different books. I plot them like their own book. So each story will hit all of the story beats. So yeah, it is like writing two books, and then putting them together. So I've written different ways. Like, I have written the historical storyline start to finish first, and then wrote the contemporary start to finish, and then figured out how to put them together. And then, like with this book, I actually kind of wrote them. Did bounce back and forth writing them, but I almost always have to go back once the manuscript is complete and see, like, okay, if this is happening at the end of this contemporary chapter, and we're going into the historical chapter, how is that transition?
Hmm.
Is there a strong enough hook at the end of the chapter to make the reader keep reading? Because the readers often tell me, like, I get so caught up in the story, and then you pull me out of it and go to a
Right.
different time period. And so there has to be a strong hook to keep them reading, and then they get hooked on this next time period, and then
Yeah.
when I leave them there. And so I have to really, put a lot of work into thinking those transitions through.
Hmm. What is it about about this process of writing the two different stories that draws you to continue writing dual timelines?
Yeah. Oh man, I just love it so much. I think because it shows that history is still relevant to our lives today,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that a lot of people, I don't think, understand. There's so many people who think that they don't like history. They're just not interested in it. It's in the past, whatever.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, we need to really know everything that happened, as much as possible, so that we don't repeat the mistakes of our predecessors.
Hmm.
But also just because, to see, it helps us understand our fellow humans today, when we know the history that influenced their cultures, and why, they have this thing going on in their country or that thing going on, or even ourselves, there's just, history is so important. And then, so this dual timeline, I feel, it does help us kind of walk the steps of someone in the historical, event, and also analyze it through a contemporary mindset, because we're still, that same event, it just kind of helps. I find it's an interesting way to connect with history and see like, oh, maybe it is relevant to my life still today.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it inspires you to, like, historical fiction, if it inspires you to look something up and learn more about that, even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was historical fiction that, and the research books, the nonfiction, that got me to decide to learn Scottish Gaelic, because like there's so many, especially like place names in Scotland. There's so many mountains that have a Gaelic name. We're a town that has a Gaelic roots in its name, and those are, hints at what happened there in history. If it's, the name translates to, the goat mountain, then, there were goats there in history, or whatever, it's just interesting.
And you're learning the pronunciation, which continually throws me off, because no matter how much I learn about the pronunciation, I still never get things right when I read it in my head.
Yeah, that's okay. You say it the way that it makes sense to you, and it'll be fine. But on that topic, I have had readers tell me that they wished they knew before starting to read the book that there is a glossary at the back. And and even on my website, I have the glossary, and I have like a pronunciation guide. So know that these tools are available to you. Don't let it interrupt your reading experience. You can refer to them when you want to, but don't discover it when you're done reading, because it's there.
We talked a little bit about the adorable Scottish cow behind you, the Highland cow behind you. Has that picture always been there, or does the artwork change depending on the book you're working on?
That's been there for a number of years. I've always loved Highland coos, and then I just love the colors in that. The artist is Sue Gardner. It's beautiful. Yeah, and this is just a print. It's not an original, but I loved it so much.
Yeah, I do too. What are you working on now?
I'm working on another dual timeline, and I'm still in Scotland, because that is where my heart is right now. So I'm in the early stages. It will be another dual timeline, but I'm still, combing through my research books, trying to find the exact historical events. I tend to do a historical event or, cultural thing more than just single in on one person, like some historical writers do. So I'm still, kind of looking for the story. The contemporary is talking to me more, but yeah, I'm in the early stages.
Okay. But fun, right? Like there's so many possibilities, I would imagine.
Oh, so many possibilities. In fact, that makes it so hard, is when I do read these research books, I dive down rabbit holes that are so fun and interesting, but end up, not going in a book at all. But that's okay. It's still fun to learn.
Exactly. But it's still fun to learn. Truer words, at least for me, were never spoken. I love to learn new things. I love to learn what seems like sometimes random things, and sometimes I learn things that I didn't expect to learn. I have a million examples. I will not bore you with them, but I love to learn. I miss school for just that reason. I don't miss writing papers or taking tests or, the pressure of college and grad school and the 8 years of post-high school education I did, but I miss learning and just being in that environment. So yeah, I love to learn, and I'm always happy when I learn something new. Let's go ahead and take our last break of this episode. When we come back, Kelli will be talking about, did she always want to write? How did she become an author? All those nosy questions I love to know the answers to. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my conversation with author Kelli Estes. Before the break, Kelli was talking about all the things that she learns in the course of researching and writing a book. It really is that iceberg analogy, right? Where what you see or what you read in the book is just a little bit, and then underneath is everything else, is the rest of the iceberg, everything that she learned that can't all be explicitly laid out in a book, because then it would be a research novel and not a fiction novel. But it's still in there. Let's return to the conversation with Kelli. Writing something you've always wanted to do, or did you decide to start writing later in life? How did that work for you?
So I grew up in a really, really small community outside of Yakima, Washington. Actually, the name of my town was Cowiche. It's just tiny, tiny town with apple orchards around me. And when I was really young, we had a cattle feedlot. So that rural. And I never met a real life writer. Like I loved to read. I was one of those kids who was always had my nose in a book. But I thought that writers must be born with magic powers, and they certainly lived far, far away from Cowiche, Washington. So I it never crossed my mind that writing was something that real people grew up and chose to do. So I got my business degree, and I was working for Boeing, the airplane manufacturer here in Seattle, when I just started feeling like I needed more creativity in my life. My soul was a little bit dying, I have to say. Like I needed creativity. And I thought, well, I love books. Maybe I'll be a librarian. Maybe I'll start a bookstore. It was like researching those options. Yeah. And then I met a woman who today is my sister-in-law. We ended up marrying brothers. But we were both just dating the guys at that time. And she told me that she was writing a book. And that really blew my mind, because, she was just a normal person, even younger than me. And like, how is this possible? And so just her saying that really turned the light bulb on for me. And I was like, well, maybe I could try this too. So I joined Romance Writers of America because I started writing romance. I eventually shifted to other things, but like this dual timeline fiction that I write now. But I started with Romance Writers of America, and through their classes and workshops and conferences, I learned so much. They were excellent at teaching craft and business of writing. And so I just started writing at that point. And so I've been writing, it's been 25 years now, but the first 14 of them I wrote 5 different novels that never got published. They were how I learned how to write. They were how I learned how to pitch to or query an agent, an editor, and do revisions. And that's how I identified, my writing weaknesses, like plotting, which is why I really focus on plotting now. I had to learn how, and emotion, those kind of things. So I didn't always know that I wanted to be a writer. Okay. Wow. But I'm so glad I found it.
Yeah, absolutely. What piece of advice would you give for someone who wants to write?
Who wants to write? Don't give up. Because after those 5 manuscripts that kept getting rejected, I thought the universe was telling me that this isn't for you. I tried to give it up, but I didn't. And it was the very next book that I wrote that became my first published. So just hang in there. Don't give up. And also learn how to trust your own voice. Learn, I think the difference that was made in that 6th manuscript I wrote that became my first published, is I went into a kind of a writing bubble. I stopped worrying about genre expectations. I didn't think about where the book would be shelved at the bookstore or the library. I just wrote the story that needed to be told. And I really think, any artistic endeavor, you need to learn to trust your own voice and know that that is the thing that will make you stand out. It'll make you stand apart from everybody else. So yeah, don't worry about, when someone says, don't write this, that's not selling, don't do that, whatever. write the story that you really want to write, and there will be somebody out there who wants to read that story. So yeah, that's my advice.
Okay, thank you. When you take time to read, just for you, I mean, outside of research and everything else that you need to do, favorite authors and genres?
I do love historical fiction, and I loved contemporary romance still. I love to read it. So favorite authors for historical dual timeline, I love Susanna Kearsley. I highly recommend her. I like Kristen Hanna. I like Susan Wiggs, Elizabeth Boyle. For contemporary romance, I've been really into Samantha Young. She writes set in the Highlands, the Scottish Highlands. So of course I love that. But also like, everybody else's names are escaping me right now, but
Of course.
so much. There's so
Yes.
many great writers out there.
Yeah, too many. I mean, I will never ever finish my TBR
Oh, same here. Yeah,
in this or any other lifetime. I mean,
I know.
maybe if I can come back as a ghost and keep reading.
There you go.
Except
Just
people
gotta
will
figure
just
out how to turn the pages.
right, and people will just keep writing. So I'm never going to catch up.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that, because books are magic.
Yes, they are. I agree. If people want to know more about you and your books, website, and any social media that you're active on.
Yeah, okay. My website is kelliestes.com, and that's Kelly with an I, .com. And on social media, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at kelly.estes.
Okay. Any pictures of your hiking?
Yeah, there's a lot on my website. Yeah.
Okay.
And on social media, if you scroll back. Yeah.
Just in case people are wanting to see some of the places that Keaka and Sorcha are hiking in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Kelli, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure you highlight or bring up at this time?
I don't think so. We talked about quite a bit. Yeah, this has been super fun. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day, out of your weekend to talk to me. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you again to Kelli for joining me to talk about Smoke on the Wind. The sun is now at the exact wrong angle in my living room, but I can't stand up to fix it because then, anyway. Thank you again to Kelli for joining me to talk about Smoke on the Wind. If you like dual timelines, or if you're a fan of historical fiction, or if you're a fan of contemporary fiction, or if you like any of those things with an element of the supernatural, then you should definitely check out Smoke on the Wind. It is really the story of two women doing their absolute best to figure out a lot of different things in their lives. Their challenges are different, but they mirror each other in some ways. It's about their relationships with their sons. So if any of this sounds great, you should definitely check it out. And just know that this is not Kelli's first novel, so there are other dual timelines, also dual timeline, historical and contemporary, as she was talking about, that you can read in addition to Smoke on the Wind. So check this one out, check out Kelli's other books, and let me know if you read any of them. I love hearing from you. I always say it, but I always mean it. I hope that you will also join me for the next conversation when I will be speaking with Tara Hodgson about her book, At Least I'm Trying. Let me give you just one little line from the last part of the description of this book, and that is, At Least I'm Trying is a poignant novel about mental health, girlhood, and what happens when the version of yourself you've worked so hard to become starts to fall apart. That is a very good, very brief teaser of what this book is about, and I am looking forward to speaking to Tara, and I hope that you will join me for this interview the next episode. In the meantime, of course, if you are a fan of this podcast, please do me the favor, the honor of liking, following, subscribing on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching the episode on. It helps the algorithm get the podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. Something else that really helps the algorithm incredibly a lot, really helps the algorithm a lot, is to leave a positive review. So if you haven't done so already and you would like to, or you're willing to, please, that is great. Do the same thing for your authors. Getting reviews on their books is incredibly helpful to get the books out to more people. So leave me a review, but also leave your favorite authors and books a review. It's a wonderful way to support your favorite authors. If you're on social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. As I said just a minute ago, I love hearing from you. I love hearing what you're reading. Hit me up. Let me know what's going on. Tomorrow is Halloween, so whatever you're doing, and it's Friday, so maybe you're going out. Whatever you're doing, have fun. Please be safe. Watch out for vampires or witches or whatever spooky, scary thing that might be out there. But no, seriously, please be safe. I will probably just be hanging out watching movies at home with the hubby, which is what I like to do best. I am the whimsical Halloween girl, as you know, not the creepy horror Halloween girl. So we'll be watching probably Hocus Pocus or something similar to that and enjoying it very much. And I'll be snuggling with puppies. That's kind of the perfect Friday evening for me, and it seems like the perfect Friday combined with Halloween for me. But whatever you do, I hope it's wonderful. Whatever you're doing this weekend, I hope it's wonderful. Whatever you're doing at all going forward, I also hope that it involves plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to